Roku's Senior Director Miles Fisher joins us for a deep dive into how Roku's new Amazon Ads partnership works for both companies and will drive CTV's full funnel future. Listen on.
Welcome to this week's edition of Inside the Stream. This is Will Richmond from Video News, and of course that was Colin Dixon from In-Screen Media. There at the top, Colin, how is everything there? I'm guessing it's a lot cooler there than it is here on the East Coast this week.
I think it is. You are really under the broiler this week, aren't you?
We are roasting here. We are triple digits in Boston this week, all up and down the East Coast. So it's a toughie right now, but it looks like it's going to let up toward the end of the week, which is good.
Yeah. Well, this week we are going to go straight to our interview with Roku because we think this is a really important deal. And so why don't we just dive into the interview?
And again, we're pleased to have Miles Fisher with us today. Miles is Senior Director, Global Ad Platform Partnerships and Business Development at Roku. Welcome, Miles.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me, guys.
Great to have you.
So first of all, Miles, congratulations. You guys announced a deal last week with Amazon Ads in particular. And so let's just start at the high level with asking you to provide an overview of the partnership Roku announced with Amazon last week and just tell us about it. Get us started.
Yeah, we're incredibly excited about the partnership. And really, this is a continuation of our strategy around performance and interoperability that we've been on, call it the last 18 to 24 months, really focusing on programmatic. And, with Amazon, they're obviously a really large, performant demand-side platform. And the relationship that we're embarking on with them is really around making Roku Media more available and allowing Amazon audiences to scale across our inventory for Roku as a publisher. And the unique and exclusive part about this relationship is also the ability for Amazon audiences to now work across other publishers on the Roku operating system. So this is really kind of a rising all tide strategy for streaming, making it easier for brands and agencies to transact, manage things like reach and frequency more holistically. The thing that is unique about both Amazon and Roku is at our core, we're customer-first companies. And in this instance, we're really focused on improving that capability for brands and agencies to continue to drive performance in CTV and streaming.
Very good. So Roku works with other DSPs. So why Amazon? Why now?
Yeah, so Roku will continue to work with all other demand-side platforms, right? Our strategy around being interoperable is making our inventory available where buyers are. So going back to 2024, we did our deeper integration with the Trade Desk, and that was focused on their universal ID. At CES, we announced an integration with Yahoo DSP around Connect ID and Backstage. So this is kind of a continuation of that strategy, but an even deeper partnership. And the reason we're going even deeper with Amazon is because of the nature and the capability of targeting on their platform, because of the unique performance demand they have, and truly because of their scale.
Very good.
That's awesome. And that's a great explanation why Roku pursued. And I know you're Roku, you're not Amazon, you can't speak for them. But nonetheless, I'll ask the question, which is, can you say anything about the opportunity that Amazon saw in the partnership?
Yeah, I think for them, it's around scale, right? Roku is the largest operating system in North America. And we take great pride in waking up every morning and being one of the only companies that focuses on CTV exclusivity. The value of working in Amazon's platform is they have an incredible amount of customer data on performance and shopping, and they're really focused on going after non-endemic dollars. And for us, our strategy is really around demand diversification and performance and being the most performant media partner in the ecosystem. So for them, they get scale now on their audiences, and we've seen great early results in some of the alpha testing.
So just obviously one of the things that Amazon was keen to work with you on is your reach. You've got great reach, probably the best certainly in the US market, the best in that market. Tell us more about the reach.
Yeah, so the Roku channel continues to grow. I think it was something like we are growing 80% year over year. We continue to be a top 5 in the Nielsen Gauge. And it's really proving not only the Roku channel, but it's really driven by the power of the Roku platform, right? We reach about 125 million people every single day that come to Roku's front door. So that's Super Bowl size reach every day. We are the entry point to television. And the Roku channel continues to grow both on a percentage of overall TV viewership, which I think we're now like 2.5%. And then in streaming alone, we're about 5%. But as the number one operating system in the front door to television, we realize that not every single impression that somebody's going to watch is on the Roku channel. And the value of this partnership is bringing that reach, scale, and addressability of Amazon audiences to all the other publishers on our platform. And the really fun thing about working at Roku is we're constantly in market selling the Roku channel as media, oftentimes competing against some of the broadcasters and other streamers. But we also hosting all of the streaming on our platform. So, we often say the streaming wars, we're not in them, they're being fought on our turf. But this is a classic example of how we can have rising tides, because the more dollars that go into streaming, either from linear or from overinvested areas like search and social, the better that is, not just for Roku, the platform, but Roku, the publisher, and all the other apps that are participating in the economics on the Roku OS.
Yeah, I don't know about Will, but I've enjoyed watching you and Tubi going back and forth in the Nielsen ratings, and you've had your nose ahead, I think, in their ratings for the last couple of months, right?
Yeah, I mean, look, the Super Bowl certainly helped them in February, and we see that with the Nielsen gauge, right? Like, we work really closely with Nielsen, and there are going to be upticks. I think Warner Brothers Discovery had a really strong March with March Madness, and you see Paramount, they have the Masters. So, one of the things that we constantly talk about with all of our partners is they are going to drive engagement for moments, but those moments are now happening on the Roku operating system. And our job as the operating system is to help consumers find that content. So outside of this Amazon partnership and what we were really focused on with in-stream video and addressable audiences, the other side of Roku's business is really focused on the Roku experience, right? And driving viewership. And one of the things that some of our teams were talking about at Cannes was all of the changing in sports rights. And a good example of that's the NBA next year. And, the finals just happened the other night. But when you think about the rights now going to Amazon and NBC, different days of the week, a consumer wants to find that. And Roku is really the best platform to help them find the content that we want. And that's something we take great pride in.
Yeah, that's a whole other topic. We should get you back to talk about that topic just alone.
I'll get someone better from Roku to talk to you about that.
Okay, fair enough. And actually, we do want to circle back toward the end of this interview to talk a little more about overall industry dynamics and streaming competition, some of the things that you just touched on with the Nielsen Gauge data and so forth. But want to really dig in on what you talked about earlier a few minutes ago about performance and full funnel and lower funnel. That has clearly been a key part of Roku's messaging now for some time. And actually, just as a parenthetical, a couple of years ago, I had one of your colleagues and a Walmart executive on a session at one of my CTV ad conferences. And so, I know that you guys, for Roku, that's been front and center for some time. Amazon obviously knows a thing or two about lower funnel and conversion. So just tell us a little more about how this integration is going to bring this full funnel concept to life, and maybe just a couple of quick follow-ups as you answer. Any specific executions you can talk about? What's kind of the ideal type of activation you envision? Are we talking QR codes, product placement, interactivity, something else? That's a lot. I'll stop and let you talk.
Yeah, look, all great questions. And, one of the things we say is performance is in the eye of the beholder, right? Like, because certain advertisers, performance is still reach and frequency. And one of the best ways to drive performance on that is understanding identity and addressability. And that's one of the things we're bringing to the table as part of this Amazon partnership. The other piece of performance, and you were kind of alluding to it, is point of sale. That is the traditional point of performance marketing, and those dollars started in search and social. And we are placing a number of bets on what performance television means, right? We have our own ads manager, our self-serve platform. We've done native integrations with platforms there. When we think about the Amazon partnership, there is so much transactional and endemic behavior that is happening on Amazon.com every day. And the core of this partnership is linking those Prime accounts to the Roku user. And when you have that one-to-one addressability in the ID that we've created with Amazon, we are now able to really collapse the funnel. And you think about somebody seeing an ad on the Roku channel, seeing an ad on Prime Video, maybe seeing an ad on Disney or Hulu, wherever they're watching, but then looking about that path to purchase, and that could be buying diapers, that could be, buying a car, right? Amazon started selling books and they've gotten well beyond that. They're the everything store or whatever they call themselves these days. But really what that is, the funnel is no longer V-shaped, right? In a lot of ways, it looks more like a wine glass. You kind of come in through search or social or Amazon, and then it gets really narrow. And then there's a few platforms that are a point of sale, and Amazon is kind of that widest point. And you mentioned we did the partnership with Walmart. Amazon really fits in this nice bucket for us because we've had this retail media strategy and we've had this programmatic strategy, and Amazon kind of sits in both of those buckets, and those worlds continue to collide.
So one of the things you talked about improvements in tests in views and frequency. Can you tell us a little bit more about that, and what type of avails were you seeing that performance in?
Yeah, so it was a small test, just to be totally honest, and a lot of this was around validating the overlap and the match of our data. And not to anybody's surprise, it was quite high considering our market share as an operating system and Amazon's market share as a buying platform. And what we really saw was consistency and reach and frequency at a user level, but more importantly was the uplift in conversion rate, right? And what those actions were, some of them were down funnel and true point of sale, and some of those were more just upper funnel, whether reach and frequency or site visitation. And I think, again, when we talk about performance, every marketer is going to have a different goal. And Amazon brings so much rich data to the table. And when we're able to connect the user level, that's really where we think this is a truly special partnership.
And just to follow up quickly, Miles, one of the sub-questions I asked you earlier was just any sense you can give about what types of activations you envision, really where the rubber meets the road on fully exploiting this opportunity. Is there something in your mind's eye yet that you can talk about in terms of how the activations would work?
Yeah, so, the activation element of it will be consistent with both Roku as a publisher today, as well as Amazon as a demand side platform. So Amazon has some unique formats that they make available across in-stream video publishers, and that's happening on the demand side. And then for us, we have relationships with high impact and more dynamic ad serving platforms. So out of the gate, it'll be more traditional overlays, squeeze backs, things like QR codes. Some of the more unique integrations that both we've done as a publisher and some of our things like OK to check out using our remote control, that isn't going to be one of the initial things here. But, again, what you're really getting at is the different parts of a performance transaction, right? And there is the core targeting and attribution, and that's where this is really starting. But over time, what does the creative look like? And I think the creative side of performance TV is still in such early innings, and we're really excited to innovate with our homegrown solutions with partners like Amazon. There's a ton of startups we're meeting with at Cannes who are really focused on AI and what that means for performance TV, reducing costs and creating higher impact units.
So you're right, it is in the early innings. So what does demand look like from clients and agencies?
Demand for the Amazon partnership or for kind of performance?
Full funnel CTV.
I think the demand for it has always been there, and I think the need to talk about it really came up end of year and early this year as there were questions around investments as dollars were under more scrutiny with tariffs and other things that we can debate all we want about macroeconomics. But the reality is all marketing dollars should always be accountable. And there's the old adage, right? You don't know which side of your investment actually works or whatever, quote, I'll butcher. But, as someone who's worked in digital most of their career, when you move into television and you really just think, oh, brand reach, frequency, it's like, those aren't true business outcomes, right? Like we need to help move things off of the shelves or off of the lots or whatever, trying people to sell. So one of the big talking points at Cannes this year was around outcomes, right? And outcomes have always been what Google and Meta have sold on. And what you've actually seen is those companies trying to talk more about brand as they've created this race to the bottom, CPA-based buying, and making like last click a thing. So they're talking further up funnel, and brands or partners like Roku and streaming and linear TV that have always been about building awareness, building brand loyalty. We're now talking about moving further down the funnel. So you're really finding that fat middle, which is the right type of thing to be talking about because you have to have a good message. You have to have a strong brand, but it shouldn't be a race to the bottom. And we talk to marketers all the time that the best CPMs aren't the cheapest CPMs, and you get what you pay for. And we value different CPMs differently, and we prioritize different inventory in our auction to different buyers at different price points.
So just a quick follow-up. Do you think that this type of functionality is going to help draw more traditional TV dollars across to digital? For sure. One of the things that we've seen is dollars are still caught up in traditional because they're tied to legacy upfronts, right? So if you want to buy the Super Bowl, you have to buy whatever show is on a certain broadcaster still at 6 p.m., right? And not a lot of people, particularly younger people, are watching, legacy broadcasts weekly, right? They're really interested in fast. They're really interested in AVOD. And one of the things we take great pride in is a user comes to Roku 27 days a month. The next highest platform that a user is going to is 8 or 9 times a month. So when you're operating or buying on Roku, you don't have to play that guessing game of what is the hottest show. And I think that's the problem with how dollars are still being allocated in linear. You're paying a tax to participate in the Super Bowl or NBA playoffs. Yeah. The eyeballs aren't there outside of those big moments. And even more of those big moments are moving towards streaming. So the upfronts will be really, really interesting over the next couple of years as that linear viewership continues to dry up.
And a couple of follow-ups on that, Miles, and certainly agree with all of what you just said. But, just maybe at a general level and then maybe in a more specific level, when you think about agencies and brands, where they are in terms of wanting full funnel on CTV, how would you characterize? Are they kind of in experimental mode right now? Are they starting to move budgets? Are there any early adopters on the client or agency side that you think of or that you're able to name?
Yeah, I would say every agency is on a different part of that journey. I think what we saw the past, 2 years ago or 3 years ago was the linear teams were starting to take over the streaming investment, right? That very clearly settled that wasn't a digital investment. The next part of that journey is if the linear team is managing the streaming investment, does that get executed on an IO or on programmatic? Now that's moving more towards programmatic. And then the next question is who is actually doing those transactions? Is it the TV team? Is it the digital team? Is it the programmatic team? So every agency is kind of on a different part of that journey. With that becomes how are we actually being measured? Reach and frequency, some sort of mid-funnel tactic or some sort of down-funnel performance tactic. I would say all the agencies are on a different journey. I would say the partners that are the furthest along are some of the teams that have brought more of that programmatic operations, programmatic strategy, or at least the visibility to programmatic further in-house. And some of those are doing that with the agencies and they're coaching them on that. I think the trend of in-housing has moved away to more of this hybrid approach and leaning on agencies for planning, activation, and strategy. But the teams that have really robust programmatic skills inside of the brand are the ones that are doing the most to really focus on that full funnel. And they're really, really leading with audience-based buying. And I think that's the core of this partnership is we are no longer in a world where you need to buy on content outside of a few high impact moments where you're really trying to have a big brand message, make an impact, drive that reach. But more and more TV is becoming audience-based buying. And some of that can be traditional demo, but even more of that and what Amazon brings to the table is really prescriptive audiences. And what we're really bullish on is the concept of first and second party data. I've firmly long been a believer in that. That's how I've kind of made the hops in my career is the companies with first party data will win at the end of the day. And companies that have first party data and make that available to brands, really second party data will truly differentiate. And that's why retail media is so strong. That's why Roku with a logged in environment of 80 million plus households. That's why Amazon connecting that to Roku is really differentiated. And I think that's where kind of the world ends up over the next 2 to 5 year horizon. Is companies with really strong organized first-party data assets can truly differentiate.
Yep. And one of the things that was mentioned in the release was this customer identity resolution. I'm really interested in this. Tell us more about this. How does it work? And tell us more.
Yeah, so a big part of our partnership is leveraging clean room technologies. Both Roku and Amazon have large customers, and nothing we can do on the advertising side is without, consent, opt-in, and working closely with our consumer and privacy teams. But what we're doing with identity resolution is really around matching one-to-one a Prime account to a Roku account, head of household. And what that allows you to do is have a persistent addressable identifier across the operating system that allows Amazon audiences to scale.
So that means, I think what I heard you say was that this actually includes Amazon shopping data as well. So it's connected. The whole thread is connected.
Oh yeah, sorry, yeah. So in Amazon's DSP, the value of their platform is having Amazon audiences.
Right.
Those audiences can be, in market for sneakers or watches or whatever people are buying on Amazon.com. That data previously didn't work at scale across the Roku channel, the Roku Audience Network, which is our aggregation of other content partners, as well as other publishers on our platform. So that really is the value here, is Roku or Amazon shopper data or Amazon data now working across all of Roku.
And sorry, one more question about this. This is quite a complicated picture, right? Because you have logged in viewers who have bought subscriptions to SVOD services through Amazon channels, through the Roku channel, and also directly on the Roku platform. So which ones are you connecting? Just give us a sort of an idea of the bounds.
Yeah. So it's across the entire Roku operating system. So what happens on Amazon channels is owned by Amazon, operated by Amazon. That is kind of their first party inventory. What this is really about is the Roku channel and the other apps on our platform, making Amazon data work across those.
Okay.
I feel the temptation to spend the next hour, if we had, talking more about the data strategy, because as Colin, I think, was just hinting at, there are a lot of moving pieces behind the scenes here to make sure all this stuff stays glued together and that ultimately the outcomes that are desired are achieved. But time is limited, unfortunately. So, this has been great. And I think we'd like to spend a little bit of time just picking your brain, stepping back and picking your brain about the industry as a whole. So kind of stepping outside of the Amazon Roku partnership. Let me just start by asking you, you're in market every day. What are the biggest CTV ad trends today, and how do you see all this stuff unfolding going forward?
I think the biggest thing that we're seeing is really around the experience of the home screen, right? I think one of the journey that CTV's been on has been the shift from linear to streaming, which was video to video. But where we're seeing the most engagement or the most questions and the most differentiated solutions from advertisers is around that home screen, because it's before the user gets into the streaming experience. The average customer spends 8 to 11 minutes a day searching for content. And when you can reach somebody before they get into the stream, the scale that you have, that unique experience, and the opportunity to surprise and delight is unmatched, right? And it is akin to a legacy portal back in the web or desktop era, or a big masthead on a video or billboard. We are the number one billboard in streaming, and historically, that advertising was only available to media and entertainment brands. And what we've done over the past year or 18 months is make that available to all sorts of brands. And the creativity that we're seeing, building things into Roku City, which is our screensaver, building clickable and shoppable, interactive, sponsoring content. We announced a partnership with Kroger at Cannes called Fresh Content Studios, where they're helping build original content for all their shopper marketers. A lot of that will be powered by our home screen. So really, really cool and unique stuff that we have very creative folks building and working on.
Wow. That's a lot. So, okay, so let's take one more step back and look at the market more broadly. Tell us what you think some of the key challenges are for CTV ads going forward.
I think there's continually a question on where the investment should fall and what is the value of the inventory you're buying. And ultimately what that is an attribution problem. CTV and streaming, I think, is where mobile was in their early innings, right? And you saw that mobile was underinvested compared to time spent. And what we're seeing in streaming right now is an influx of supply that is met with the right number of eyeballs, because that's where the viewership is happening, but an underinvestment for marketers. And that's really a proof point in how they measure the outcomes. And that really leads back to why we're doing a partnership like we did with Amazon, because it is about media accountability. And what you learn from performance marketing that hasn't made its way into streaming is when you can actually prove the outcomes, the investment quickly follows. Yeah. And TV has always been around brand and surprise and delight. And performance should not be a race to the bottom. You can still have very high CPMs. Meta does that well. Google does that well. but they can be performant. And that's kind of where we think kind of the next phase of streaming will be as the allocation of funds meet where the eyeballs are.
So, Miles, we're going to wrap this up with the softest of softballs to you, which is that, and you've already, of course, answered this question in different parts and pieces, but just to kind of sum it up, how Roku is thinking about competitive advantage in the ad space, aside from you've obviously talked about the Amazon deal, but broadly speaking, competitive advantage for Roku going forward.
For us, it's, our competition is our partners. And it's one of the fun things about doing partnerships at a company like Roku. And our competitive advantage is our reach and our scale. You cannot make that up and you cannot fake that. And in a world of accountability and proving value, the fact that we get 125 million people daily reach coming to our operating system and using that to drive people to the Roku channel or other content they want to watch, particularly in a world of fragmentation, that's Roku's superpower. And as we continue to do more to enhance the user experience, the ad dollars will continue to follow, and the flywheel that we've been building should continue to accelerate, and we're really excited about it.
Awesome. Miles Fisher, Senior Director, Global Ad Platform Partnerships and Business Development at Roku. Thank you so much for joining us, and again, congrats on the Amazon deal.
Thanks, Colin. Thanks, Will.
Thanks, Miles.
Thanks, Miles.
Inside the Stream is a production of In-Screen Media and Video News, all rights reserved.